Ladies and gentlemen, there is a quiet power in moving without announcement, in rising without declaration, in building something extraordinary without asking the world to watch. The world is addicted to noise. Constant chatter, endless declarations, performances of progress with no real depth beneath them. But you do not become great by announcing that you will. You become great by doing the work while no one is looking, by carrying your weight in silence, by mastering yourself in private, before ever seeking a stage. The need to be seen, to be validated, to be celebrated for effort before outcome. That is the disease that kills potential before it breathes. There is a pride that comes not from praise, but from discipline. A power, not in volume, but in intention. And it is found in those moments where you work, not for attention, but for mastery. Where you push, not because the world demands it, but because your soul does. That is where true transformation begins. The deepest strength you will ever possess is forged in solitude. It's when you're alone, when no one is watching, that the real work begins. Because when you work in silence, there is no applause to fuel you. There is no praise to reward you. There is only the task, the goal, the mountain in front of you, and your choice to climb it. And when you choose to climb anyway, that's when you become something unstoppable. People today have become obsessed with perception. They want to look like they're winning before they've actually won. They want the rewards of greatness without the price of discipline. But life doesn't work that way. You don't get strong by pretending. You don't build character by being loud. You build it by showing up when it's hard, by doing what's necessary when it's boring, by committing when it's lonely, and by staying quiet while the rest of the world is screaming for attention. There is a reason why the greatest achievements in history were built in silence. Bridges, cathedrals, empires, they weren't constructed through declarations. They were constructed through labor, through consistency, through sweat, through devotion, and no one celebrated them during their construction. No one posted them on a timeline. They just kept building, stone by stone, inch by inch, quietly, relentlessly, until one day the world looked up and saw something unshakable. The loudest people are often the ones who have done the least, because noise becomes a substitute for proof, and proof only comes through process. The process that is painful, the process that is invisible, the process that breaks down the weaker parts of you until only strength remains. That process is not glamorous, it is not shareable, but it is sacred, because that's where growth is born, not in the celebration, but in the repetition. Not in the applause, but in the grind. The problem is, silence is uncomfortable. Most people don't know how to sit with it. They mistake silence for stagnation. They think if no one sees their effort, it must not count. But silence is where roots grow. It's where foundation is laid. It's where you are separated from the crowd and forced to find your own voice, your own discipline, your own standard. And that's terrifying for most, because silence removes the mask. It forces you to face who you are when no one's watching. You discover your worth not in how many people notice your progress, but in how you act when no one does. Can you still move forward? Can you still show up? Can you still stay focused when the world offers you distraction after distraction? Because that's where the real test lies. Not in the moments when everything is going right, but in the ones when no one is paying attention and you still refuse to quit. You do not rise because the world gave you permission. You rise because you gave it to yourself, because you decided that your standard would not be set by the eyes of others, but by the fire within. And that fire does not need praise to burn. It does not need validation to exist. It needs purpose. It needs clarity. It needs silence. When you work in silence, you free yourself from the prison of performance. You stop needing to look successful and start becoming successful. You stop crafting an image and start crafting a legacy, and legacy is not built through announcements. It is built through action, through consistency in the shadows, through patience with the process, through endurance in the dark. The most dangerous person in the room is not the one who talks the loudest. It's the one who listens, the one who observes, the one who studies, the one who waits, the one who prepares without needing to be seen, because that person isn't operating for attention. They're operating for mastery, and mastery is never loud. It is deliberate. It is patient. It is quiet. There is an ancient discipline in learning to keep your mouth shut while your hands are busy building. Because when you do that, you build something real, something that doesn't collapse under the weight of criticism or doubt, something that doesn't require constant validation to sustain itself. You build something rooted in truth, in skill, in effort, in relentless, quiet discipline. And when the world finally sees what you've built, they won't understand where it came from. They'll call it talent, they'll call it luck, they'll call it natural, but they will not see the years in the dark, the nights of silence, the mornings of solitude, the thousands of hours when you worked while others watched. The sacrifices that were made without a single witness, and that's fine, let them guess. Let them wonder, that's the reward of working in silence. You don't need to explain yourself. Your results speak louder than any declaration ever could. It takes maturity to withhold your progress, to know you're improving and say nothing, to be winning and stay silent, to succeed and resist the urge to shout, because that silence, that restraint, that self-control is a sign of power. Power over your impulses, power over your ego, power over the part of you that craves attention more than achievement. Working in silence teaches you patience. It forces you to separate the work from the reward. It shows you that not everything you do needs to be seen to be valuable, that some of the most important victories are internal, that real progress is felt, not flaunted, and when you learn to love the process for its own sake, you become unstoppable. Because your motivation is no longer external, it's not dependent on praise, it's internal, it's yours, it cannot be taken away. There is no shortcut to mastery. There is no express lane to greatness. The path is slow, it is hard, it is repetitive, and it is filled with silence. But if you can fall in love with that silence, if you can learn to thrive in the absence of applause, you will rise while others wait to be seen. You will progress while others perform. And one day, when it all comes together, when your work finally steps into the light, it won't need to be explained. It will be undeniable. But until that day comes, stay focused. Stay committed, stay disciplined, let the world be noisy, let others chase attention. Let them waste energy proving instead of improving. You keep building, you keep moving, you keep sharpening the blade in silence. Because when it's time, when the moment is right, that silence will erupt into something so powerful that the noise won't matter. You don't need to be seen to be valuable. You don't need to be followed to be disciplined. You don't need to be noticed to be great. You just need to be consistent. You just need to be willing to show up when no one claps, to push when no one's watching, to believe when no one else does. That's what separates those who talk from those who do. And those who do, they don't need to say a word. Their work says everything. So choose the path of silence. Choose the discipline of invisibility. Choose the strength of restraint, and let your success be your voice. Let your results make the noise. Let your life become the proof, because the ones who work in silence, they don't just win, they last, they endure. They rise not just once, but over and over again. And they do it without ever having to ask for permission. Power isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout to be real. It doesn't need to be displayed to be present. The strongest individuals aren't the ones constantly telling the world who they are, what they're doing, or where they're going. They're the ones moving in silence, building something real, something deep, something unshakable, without the need to announce it every step of the way. Because when your power is real, you don't perform it. You live it, you embody it, you become it. There is a deep kind of strength that emerges when you stop seeking validation for your every move, when you realize you don't owe anyone an explanation, that you don't need a stage to be effective, that your greatness is not dependent on visibility. This kind of power is rooted in self-respect, in internal standards, in quiet discipline. It's born in the dark, away from praise, away from eyes, away from noise. And that's what makes it dangerous, because it's not performative, it's authentic. People today are obsessed with being seen. They confuse attention with impact. They chase applause as if it's currency. They post every small win, every bit of progress, every ounce of grind, but real power doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek attention. In fact, it thrives without it. It's cultivated in silence because silence forces you to grow without the crutch of external approval. It demands that you become self-directed, that you move without spectators, that you commit without an audience. Silence demands accountability. You can't hide behind appearances when no one is watching. You can't fake consistency in the dark. The silence strips away the performative layers and leaves you face to face with who you really are. Are you disciplined when there's no reward in sight? Are you focused when there's no one to clap? Are you relentless when no one is watching you grind? That's when your character is revealed. That's where real power is formed. You see, performance power is fleeting. It's fragile. It crumbles when the applause stops. It falls apart when the lights dim, because it was never rooted in substance. It was fueled by attention. But power built in silence is immune to external conditions. It's solid. It's consistent. It's grounded. Because it doesn't rely on the world to keep going. It relies on internal values, on purpose, on an unshakable vision that does not need to be validated to be pursued. When you stop performing and start building, you begin to understand what strength really feels like. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's not always glamorous, it's often slow, it's repetitive, it's hard, but it's real, and because it's real, it lasts. It doesn't waver with opinion. It doesn't depend on trend. It doesn't need permission, it just moves with intention, with clarity, with conviction. That's why the people who truly become great are the ones you often don't hear from until they've already arrived. They were too busy doing the work to talk about it. Too focused on becoming the thing instead of being perceived as the thing. And by the time the world noticed, it was too late to question it. The results spoke. The power was evident, the success undeniable, because when you work in silence, the silence becomes the proof. It becomes the foundation of a life that can't be shaken by external noise. There's a certain level of quiet that only the confident can handle. Because silence is confrontational, it reveals what's beneath the surface, and if there's nothing there, it will show. That's why so many avoid it. They fill the silence with distractions, announcements, performances, anything to avoid the pressure of having to truly build something in solitude. But if you can endure the silence, if you can embrace the solitude, if you can trust the process without needing to broadcast it, you become a different kind of person. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, who doesn't need recognition to be relentless, who doesn't need a crowd to stay consistent. You become grounded, rooted, focused, and that level of power can't be imitated. It can't be faked because it's been earned. Quietly, painfully, day by day, brick by brick, decision by decision. Working in silence teaches you that your worth isn't tied to visibility, that your progress isn't made more real by being witnessed, that your potential isn't defined by likes, comments, or applause. It reminds you that your greatest victories will often be private, that your most important growth will be unseen, that your defining moments will occur in rooms no one else enters. And that's exactly how it should be, because that's the kind of power that can't be taken, can't be mocked, can't be touched. True power doesn't beg for attention. It demands respect through presence, through performance, through unshakable excellence that needs no announcement. You walk into a room and people feel it, not because you said something, but because you are something, something built, something hardened, something sharp, and you don't need to prove it. You've lived it. You've earned it. There is a discipline in silence that the world desperately needs but refuses to teach. The discipline to shut up and show up. The discipline to stop talking about your goals and start becoming the kind of person who can carry them. The discipline to grind quietly, to evolve privately, to rise humbly. That is the discipline that separates the loud from the lethal, the talkers from the doers, the surface from the substance. So the next time you feel tempted to prove, to perform, to posture, pause. And remember that real power doesn't need to be seen to be effective. It doesn't need to be heard to make impact. It just needs to be lived deeply, consistently, relentlessly, in silence, because silence doesn't weaken the strong, it reveals them. It doesn't hide power, it forges it. And when you've been forged in silence, when your roots are deep and your focus is true, no storm can break you, no doubt can derail you, no opinion can shake you. Because you know who you are, you know what you've done, and you know what you're capable of. That is the kind of power that outlasts noise, outlasts fame, outlasts fear, the kind of power that was never about being seen. It was always about becoming unshakable. Mastery is not something you stumble into. It's not an accident, and it's not gifted. It is chosen, it is earned, it is suffered for. And what separates those who touch it from those who simply talk about it is discipline. Not the kind that's loud or glamorous, the kind that happens when there's no spotlight, no recognition, no one clapping, just you, your work, and the resistance that never goes away. Mastery demands that you show up with excellence when no one's watching. It demands discipline without validation. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's a mindset you turn on when you feel inspired. But that's not discipline. That's enthusiasm, and enthusiasm fades. Discipline is what remains when the feeling is gone, when the goal is far, when the results are invisible. Discipline is action in the absence of applause. It's choosing consistency when progress feels microscopic. It's doing what needs to be done not because someone will see it, but because you made a promise to yourself. Validation is a trap. It's a drug. Once you begin to need it, you start performing instead of building. You start chasing attention instead of chasing mastery. And slowly, your standard becomes external. You don't ask, did I do my best? You ask, did they notice me? And the moment you start working for acknowledgement instead of alignment, you lose your edge. You compromise the very thing that builds greatness, internal accountability. You cannot build something meaningful if your fuel is approval, because approval is inconsistent, it's biased, it's temporary. One day you'll be praised, the next day ignored. If your discipline depends on applause, your growth will be unstable. But if your discipline comes from conviction, from an internal code, from a standard that doesn't flex with public opinion, then you can keep climbing. Then your craft becomes bulletproof. Mastery requires that you show up over and over again to the same grind, the same repetition, the same uncomfortable process, without anyone cheering for you. And it's in that silence, in that invisible suffering, that something happens. You sharpen, you toughen, you evolve. The work begins to transform you, not just your results. Because discipline doesn't just change your skills. It rewires your character. It reshapes your identity. It tells you every day who you really are. It's easy to stay disciplined when the outcome is immediate, when the praise is loud, when the results are visible. But that's not when mastery is formed. Mastery is born in the tension between effort and outcome. It's born in the moments when you've been showing up, grinding, sacrificing, and still there's nothing to show for it, no external proof, no standing ovation. Just you and the question, can you keep going anyway? That's the crucible. That's the place where the weak turn back and the great level up. You must learn to love the work for its own sake, to love the practice, the discipline, the structure, because mastery is not the final moment when the world recognizes you. It's the 1,000 unseen hours that lead up to it. It's the obsession with improvement, the relentless pursuit of better. And if you only move when someone is watching, you'll never get there, because the climb is too long, too lonely, too brutal for anything but internal fuel to sustain you. Validation might get you started, but it will not keep you going. At some point, the likes won't be enough, the compliments won't land, the praise will feel hollow, because deep down you know the truth that you're either building something real or you're pretending. And if you've built your identity around being noticed, then the silence of growth will feel like failure, but it's not failure. It's the necessary condition of transformation. Discipline without validation is the decision to trust yourself, to trust the process, to trust that what you are becoming matters more than what people see right now. It's the humility to stay a student, to embrace boredom, to pursue refinement instead of attention. That's where the greats live, in the shadows, in the silence, in the repetition. There's a moment in every journey where no one cares what you're doing, No one is impressed. No one is listening. That's the testing ground. The threshold, the filter, most people can't pass through it because they crave affirmation more than they crave growth. But if you can stay steady when the world is silent, if you can hold the line when there's nothing coming back, you're dangerous. You're built different, you're unstoppable. There's a loneliness in mastery that most people are not willing to endure. A quiet grind that no one celebrates. A level of focus that demands you shut out the noise, the praise, the opinion. And that's why so few reach it. Because they don't just have to defeat failure. They have to defeat distraction. They have to choose substance over style, depth over hype, discipline over performance. Your relationship with validation reveals everything about your trajectory. If you need it, you'll always be limited. But if you can work without it, you become limitless. Because nothing can shake someone who's built their life on unshakable values. You don't need recognition to reinforce your effort. Your integrity is enough. Your standard is enough. Your commitment is enough. So the next time you feel unseen, overlooked, uncelebrated, good, that's the place where greatness is built. That's the place where discipline is tested. That's the place where most give up and you decide to keep going. Because your mission is bigger than attention. Your purpose is deeper than applause. You're not here to be noticed. You're here to become undeniable. Mastery demands that you sacrifice your need to be understood right now for the power to be remembered forever. And that means showing up even when the work feels thankless, even when the path feels empty, even when the discipline feels suffocating, because that pressure, that silence, that invisibility, that's the resistance that makes you stronger, that's the forge, and only those who endure it become something rare. So don't chase validation. Chase mastery, chase truth, chase excellence, and let the world catch up later. Let the work speak for you. Let your results arrive like thunder, but until then, embrace the silence. Embrace the grind, and remember, discipline without validation isn't punishment, it's freedom. It's where you stop needing to be seen and start becoming someone worth remembering. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. The illusion of progress often holds more weight than actual progress. People post more about what they're doing than they actually do it. The perception of hard work is sold as the real thing. Image is marketed as substance. But real achievement, the kind that endures, the kind that transforms, the kind that commands respect, doesn't come from how the world sees you. It comes from how committed you are to the process when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, and when no one even knows your name. The process is the truth. It's raw, it's unfiltered. It's where reality checks every delusion. In the process, you cannot lie to yourself. You either did the work or you didn't. You either put in the reps or you skipped them. You either stayed focused or you drifted. Public perception can be crafted, shaped, edited, but the process strips all of that away. It holds a mirror up to your discipline, to your decisions, and to the integrity with which you carry yourself when there is no incentive but growth. The problem is most people don't respect the process because the process isn't flashy. It's not fast. It doesn't guarantee attention. It's repetitive. It's lonely. It's full of discomfort. And because it doesn't give you instant results, it doesn't give you instant praise. But that's what makes it so valuable. Because anything that takes time to build takes time to break. And anything that is rushed to please an audience is too weak to withstand the pressure of reality. People get lost chasing public perception. They want to look like they're progressing, so they curate a version of themselves that seems consistent, motivated, driven. But behind the scenes, they cut corners. They skip steps. They ignore the fundamentals, and eventually it shows, not in the image, but in the outcomes. Because perception can only mask a lack of discipline for so long. Sooner or later, the truth of your habits shows up in your results. And by then, it's too late to fake it. The process humbles you. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your image. It doesn't care what people think of you. It only responds to effort, to focus, to time. The process demands that you sacrifice comfort for consistency, that you give more than you get, and that you persist even when your progress is invisible to the world. It teaches you that what people think doesn't matter if you know you're doing the work. Because here's the truth. If you win in public but lose in private, you're still losing. If the world thinks you're disciplined but your daily life is chaos, there is no real success. There's only illusion. And illusions don't last. They crack under pressure. They dissolve under stress. But when your success is built on the process, when it's grounded in the boring, uncelebrated grind, it can't be shaken. Because it's real, because it wasn't done for them, it was done for you. The process also keeps you honest. Public perception might allow you to deceive others, but the process reveals you to yourself. You start to realize where you're weak, where you lack consistency, where you make excuses, and instead of hiding from those truths, the process forces you to face them, to deal with them, to grow beyond them. And that's the only kind of growth that lasts. Not the kind that's praised, but the kind that's earned. Most people want results without the requirements. They want mastery without monotony. They want excellence without effort. But the process doesn't allow shortcuts. It demands your patience, your sacrifice, your respect. And the moment you stop respecting it, you stop growing. Because the process isn't about how fast you move, it's about how deeply you're willing to commit to what's necessary, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when it's thankless. When you embrace the process, you stop comparing yourself to others. You stop worrying about whether they are ahead or behind, because you realize that the process isn't a race. It's a refinement. It's not about winning quickly. It's about becoming unbreakable. You start focusing on your own habits, your own mindset, your own discipline. And when you look in the mirror, the validation comes from knowing you're in the arena doing the work regardless of who's watching. Public perception will come and go. People will cheer, then they'll move on. They'll admire you, then forget you. They'll praise your highlight reel, but never see your behind the scenes. If your sense of worth is tied to their opinion, you'll be chasing approval for the rest of your life. But if your sense of worth is built in the process, then it can't be shaken, because it wasn't gifted to you. It was built by you. You have to ask yourself, what do you want more, the appearance of success or the reality of growth? The applause or the actual skill, the attention or the transformation, because you can't have both, not at the beginning. If you want real success, you have to disappear into the work. You have to go underground. You have to be willing to not be recognized, not be celebrated, not be seen, for as long as it takes to become someone the world can't ignore. And by the time they notice, it won't matter, because you didn't do it for them. You did it because you couldn't stand to be anything less than what you were capable of. You did it because you made a decision to rise, not for applause, but for alignment. And that kind of progress, the kind that comes from within, the kind that's driven by discipline, not validation, that's the kind of progress that changes everything. There's a different kind of peace that comes from knowing you're not faking it, that you didn't just talk about it, you lived it, that you didn't just chase the image, you embodied the effort, that you didn't just seek approval, you honored your own standard, and when you move that way, your life starts to echo. Not because you shouted, but because you built something that can't be denied. So stop asking how you look. Start asking how you live. Stop worrying about what they think. Start worrying about whether you're growing. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is whether you showed up, whether you improved, whether you honored the process. Everything else is noise. Everything else fades. But what you build through discipline and patience, that lasts. That's what makes you unshakable. It's easy to talk. It costs nothing to declare your dreams, to announce your intentions, to proclaim to the world that you're on your way to something great. But talking doesn't build anything. Declarations don't produce results. Volume does not equal value. And at some point, the question must be asked, are you doing the work, or are you just performing? Because eventually, the noise dies down, and all that remains is what you've built. And if you've built nothing, then all the noise meant nothing. The truth is simple. Let your results make the noise. Results are the great equalizer. They don't lie. They don't need explaining. They don't need defending. When you've put in the work, the evidence becomes undeniable. You don't have to convince anyone that you're disciplined when discipline is embedded in your actions. You don't have to persuade anyone of your growth when your life reflects transformation. You don't have to prove your intentions when your results speak for themselves. The temptation to be seen, to be acknowledged, to receive applause before achievement is strong. But every second you spend trying to be noticed is a second not spent becoming someone worth noticing. There's a reason the most formidable people are often the quietest, because they understand that respect is not something you demand. It's something you attract through relentless execution, not words, not posts, not promises, results. The danger of noise is that it creates a false sense of progress. You feel like you're moving forward because people are reacting to your ambition. You feel like you're growing because others are affirming your efforts. But affirmation is not confirmation of mastery. Validation is not a substitute for outcome. The only way to know if what you're doing is working is to measure it in reality, not in perception. That's why the most dangerous individual is the one who's been quietly working in the shadows. The one who hasn't said a word, the one who didn't need to announce their grind, because when the results show up, they arrive like thunder, and by the time the world hears the sound, the storm has already been built. That's the kind of power that doesn't need to talk. That's the kind of presence that makes people stop and pay attention without ever asking them to. Letting your results make the noise means you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of your path. You stop arguing with doubters. You stop defending your process. You stop justifying your vision, because all of that is wasted energy. The scoreboard doesn't care about opinions. The outcome doesn't need permission. And when you win, they'll notice, even if they tried to ignore you, even if they doubted you, even if they mocked you. Results silence everything. But here's the key. Results don't come from hoping. They don't come from pretending. They don't come from the illusion of hard work. They come from the actual grind, from the discipline, from the consistency that no one else sees, from the effort that goes unnoticed, day after day, week after week. Results are not given to the loud. They're given to the relentless. This requires a level of patience most people can't stomach. Because results take time, the grind takes time, and in a world addicted to instant gratification, silence feels like failure. But it's not. Silence is just the sound of construction, the sound of someone building, brick by brick, without distraction, without applause, and the stronger the foundation, the louder the impact when it's finally revealed. You don't need to advertise your effort if you're committed to the outcome. You don't need to document every step if you're devoted to arriving. You don't need to announce every move if you're truly focused on growth. Because the deeper your roots go, the taller your tree can stand, and no one applauds the roots. But they're the reason the tree doesn't fall. There's a confidence that comes from knowing you've done the work. A quiet strength that needs no validation. Because when you've suffered for your growth, when you've earned your transformation, when you've sacrificed for your standard, what they think no longer matters. You don't need permission. You don't need praise. You just need the process. You just need your discipline. You just need the truth of your effort to speak in your place. Letting your results make the noise means you trust the process more than the perception. It means you understand that slow, consistent progress is more powerful than loud, empty announcements. It means you'd rather be underestimated and overdeliver than overpromise and underperform, because real work never needs hype. It just needs time. This isn't about being silent forever. It's about being silent until the work speaks louder than you ever could. It's about keeping your head down long enough that when you finally look up, the results are undeniable. It's about respecting the process so deeply that you no longer feel rushed by the timeline of others or pressured by the noise of the world. Because you know that mastery doesn't happen in public. It happens in the shadows. And when you've been forged in the shadows, when you've bled in the dark, when you've fought battles no one will ever see, your results will carry a weight that can't be faked. That's why they'll listen. Not because you shouted, but because you built something that cannot be ignored. That's why your silence will become your legacy. Because while others were busy talking, you were busy transforming. There's nothing more powerful than being underestimated and then showing up with undeniable proof. There's no better feeling than knowing you didn't have to explain yourself. Your results did it for you. There's no louder noise than quiet work that finally comes to light. So don't waste time trying to be impressive. Focus on becoming real. Don't chase visibility, chase truth. Don't worry about being noticed. Just make sure that when you are, there's no doubt left in anyone's mind. Because when you let your results make the noise, you no longer compete with words. You dominate with proof. You no longer live in potential. You live in execution. You no longer ask for respect. You embody it. And that's the kind of presence that shifts rooms, moves hearts, and redefines what people believe is possible. All without saying a single word,